If you find a dollhouse sealed in clay, do not open it or talk to anyone. Walking through a very tall but kind of cramped building. Every floor has its own strange and sometimes invisible entity. Oh, and there are rules to keep the peace. Mostly only one. Don't interact with or touch them, or they can actually hurt you, and do not go into the basement, or whatever lurks down there will be free to roam every floor. I learned these rules from a few kids on the main floor of the house that I had no recollection of entering. It felt like it was nighttime because whenever there was an unlit space, it was close to zero visibility aside from whatever lights were turned on. My kids were getting tired and I wanted to try to bring my toddler with me to find the ground floor to get some shut-eye with peace of mind, knowing she wouldn't be tempted to fall down some stairs. Since my husband was basically already asleep on the couch while the boys were curled up on a love seat and recliner, I thought I'd find an actual bedroom for us. Each floor down was just empty floor plan and the occasional child wandering around, but I figured those were the kids of whoever's house we found ourselves staying the night at. So I paid them no mind and kept on the search. One floor down got creepy fast. There was a charred face of a man who was only half lit by the light at the top of the stairs when I turned it on after opening the door to the stairwell. The rest of him was steeped in complete black towards the last third of the staircase. I immediately knew I messed up and opened the basement door. With my half-awake girl on my hip, I backed up 2 feet and eased the door shut and locked it. As I turn around, there's a girl that's maybe 6 years old and she's smiling at me. She says I should follow her back upstairs and remember to follow the rules. Whoever this girl is, she sure is a magnet for whatever spooky things go on here. Because as soon as she spoke there was a loud thump at the door I just closed. I look down at my girl's face to see her eyes go wide as she's no longer sleepy and feels unsafe. She clings a bit tighter to me and buries her face into my shoulder, so we quickly head back upstairs. As we ascend I see a woman in white with long black hair through the corner of my eye walk across the adjacent stairs that I had not seen on my way down. The 6-year-old turns to face me before we get to the landing with eyes that say do not look at it or even in its general direction. When we get to the floor that had been all open and unfurnished, it looked identical to the one I had started in. A couch, chair and love seat sat vacant and the only light on was coming from the stove light in the far corner. As I go to exchange a glance with the girl, a thin body with a veil over its face blocked out some of that light and we ran to the next set of stairs. When we were halfway up the stairs, a boy about the same age as our guide peeked his head over the railing with a huge grin on his face and malice in his eyes. Our guide didn't take notice until I asked if she had a twin. Her skin went 3 shades whiter, then she picked up her pace without taking her eyes off the steps, so I did the same. Once we got back to the floor I started on, she turns to me and says that the last entity was her brother who liked to push anyone who looks into his eyes, down the stairs. Then she cuts me off before I can ask and states yes. That was the basement that you had opened. I turned to see the rest of my family asleep in their respective places, which gave me some relief, but there still isn't space for me to lay down with my now passed out toddler and my sore back from just climbing so many stairs. So she beckons me into the kitchen to at least sit for a while. On the kitchen table sat a huge dollhouse coated in a thick layer of wet clay. The girl smiles wide as my husband shuffles in to see what's going on, and when he sees the dollhouse he asks me where I found it and if I've seen what's underneath the clay. Before I can say no, he's standing at the side of the table and bending down to get a closer look. I look up to get the girl's approval, and not only was she not there, but my husband now has a butter knife in his hand and is making a seam around the house's middle. Instant fear and panic swept over me as he's lifting the top half of the clay off and my daughter starts crying. All the pieces started coming together in my head. We only met the girl after the basement was opened. The floor plan only changed after we started following this girl, and probably the only thing keeping the entities from harming the living was this clay sealing them in their respective places. And my husband just let them all out. My sons shot up out of their sleep, as if night terrors had woke them as soon as the clay had been lifted off. Then I hear my son say, "Who's that boy near the stairs?" like for part 2.